Hello, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to today's webinar featuring the latest in cloud technology for contractors, Sage Intacct Construction. Our subject matter expert today is Bob Sandlins from Accord & Company. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone is muted for a clean listening experience, so if you have questions, please type them into the questions box and we will address them at the end of the session. Today's webinar is being recorded and we will email out a copy to everyone later on today. I will now turn it over to you, Bob.
Well, thank you, Krista. Good morning, and thank you for joining us to review our modern cloud solution, Sage Intacct Construction. By way of introduction, here is my contact information. I've worked with many of you over the years, so hello, if we've not chatted in a while. For those of you new to Accord, we're a Sage partner, business partner, with a technology focus on construction, real estate, and service-based companies. And we support thousands of clients and have a deep bench of Sage certified consultants ready to assist you with any needs. Today's agenda is we have a 30-minute window together, so we'll stay high level. So if there are interests that you'd like to dig deeper into, just let us know and we'll set up a personal demonstration for each of you. But the demonstration will be first just a highlights and via a PowerPoint deck, and I promise we'll get into the software as quickly as possible. With respect to the agenda, we want to share the advantages of new dashboard, interactive dashboard viewing of your company data, whether it's financial data or project-related data, or even vendor or customer data, all via dashboards, all interactives. We'll also review the UX and UI design, which relate specifically to the user experience and user interface. For those of you on Sage 300, there's been an interest to get more modern looking screen designs. And I think you'll see that with our latest release, Sage Intacct Construction. Then we'll walk through a few workflows just to show you what it looks like to set up a vendor, enter a bill, create a purchase order, log a bill against a purchase order, and see the efficiency in the work processes. And of course, again, a deeper dive, just email or call us and we'll set up that for you. Many of you attending this webinar are either using Sage 100 Contractor, Sage 300 CRE, or another product, but those products that have been in market for a while can run either on your own server right there in your office, or in a hybrid environment, it can be cloud hosted for you. So then you would be accessing that software from anywhere, but it's a server that's hosted for you with your specific applications and data. Sage Intacct is a next generation product built natively for the cloud, is a true multi-tenant SaaS, which means software as a service solution. So Sage Intacct, we currently have 13,000 customers, and we'll talk about the evolution and how we now are entering into the construction space with Intacct. So a little bit of history. Some of you have been on Sage 300 or Master Builder for years. And those products have evolved over time with Sage, from Timberline to Sage 300 CRE, and from Master Builder to Sage 100 Contractor. The next generation product, again, web native product, is Sage Intacct. And much of what we've learned within Sage 300, aka Timberline, or Sage 100, Master Builder, we've built into Sage Intacct. So you'll see some very specific improvements within Sage Intacct that I think address many of your wishes over the years about Sage's improvements. So just a little bit about Sage as a platform, Sage Intacct as a platform. It's built on a rock solid financial core. I'll talk about more about that in a minute. It's a best-in-class financial solution built from the ground up, again, for the web. Open APIs make interacting with data not only possible, but relatively simple. Unlike our I would want to say our legacy products, our Sage 100 and Sage 300, that depend on importing of data from one application to another, not within the suite, but from other applications. Here, many companies will connect directly to the Sage Intacct Construction platform via an API. An API is an application program interface. It's a more modern way to connect software applications. Just a couple other things real quick before we jump in. Sage Intacct, surprisingly, is the only preferred provider of by the AICPA and the only publisher to have earned this endorsement. Intacct is the undisputed leader as well in customer satisfaction, evidenced by a rating of 98 out of 100 on G2 Crowd across 2,000 reviews now. Intacct is also a leader in innovation recognized by visionary industry analysts like Gartner. So a couple things very different than what you experience today. Sage Intacct Construction has 4 releases a year. They roll out automatically to every customer, all 13 at the same time or the same day, which is the second Saturday in the months February, May, August, and November. So Monday morning when you walk in, all the updates, enhancements that have been worked on in the previous quarter are automatically provisioned to your environment. This slide is intended just to show you pre-construction where the focus was with Sage Intacct. The importance of this is you can see that we're going to lay in the construction functionality that you're used to with Sage 100 and 300, but yet we have the ability to leverage other applications, other components that might be relevant to other types of businesses that you might have in your own company's portfolio. So here is a screen that shows what was changed specific for the construction environment in the release of this, which first was announced and released in February of 2020. So we're now a year into Sage Intacct Construction releases. I highlight this screen just to show you that there's a core set of applications. Some of you I know right now are using these other applications, whether it's Salesforce or Procore or Bill.com. These products all connect right now to Sage Intacct Construction real time via APIs. So more about that later. Some of you on this webinar have also already used or have deployed other products that are launch partners or were launch partners in 2020. And then some of the common products that today integrate with 100 and 300, like TimberScan, have been redesigned specific to Sage Intacct. So TimberScan now is TimberScan Titanium, and the Titanium version is the web version of TimberScan that now integrates with Sage Intacct Construction. So let's jump in. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this PowerPoint, and we're going to just jump right into the software. And we'll start with dashboards. So again, like you do today, whether you're logging into 100 or 300, you'll see a screen based on settings for each of you. I've logged in and I've logged right into a dashboard. You'll see though that you could log into a home page or specifically right to an application. I'll talk more about the login options and how it can vary by user. But to start, just to introduce you to what is Sage Intacct? Well, it's a modern state-of-the-art ERP solution, enterprise resource planning that is, construction accounting specifically. And what makes it very different than 100 and 300 is first just navigating and accessing data in your company. So by example, I've logged into an environment and it takes me right to a project dashboard, which is this screen right here. And you can see if you roll down, you'll see different views of projects and the layout of these. Like here's a WIP schedule for all projects. And by the way, wherever you see a blue link, we'll see this in a minute, you can drill down to the transactions that make up those numbers right from the dashboard. Now here's a view of a report you could just blow up and see full screen if you'd like. By the way, any one of these components of the dashboard with one click could be dropped into Excel. Here's a WIP using a forecast as opposed to a WIP that's calculating cost to cost. There's a WIP by project manager, or it could be by job type. Here's a backlog report. So these are all different views of data. Now, when you log in, dashboards could present information in report form, could be maybe a bar graph, a pie chart. So what you see when you log into a dashboard might vary based on your personal preferences or role preferences. So notice this dashboard has 3 performance cards with trending indicators on each performance card. And then we have an income statement, a balance sheet. Now, I'm sure some of you are saying, well, hey, can you just click on one of those numbers? Like, I want to see the sales 5,000 in a specific division or department. You click right down into the transactions. And that's everywhere. So if I roll down into, let's say we open up this particular statement, full screen, and if I want to roll into these expenses, in this case, we're on an income statement by department, but with one click, drill right down to transactions. Now you could actually drill down into the transaction and see the attached document, invoice perhaps, or purchase order. So just know that you can, from any dashboard, drill into the detail. And by the way, if you noticed on the right side of that screen, there was one click to export to Excel. Also, all the dashboards, whether you're looking at project data, financial data, you can change the filters up top. So these are actually dimensions in the Sage Intacct platform or database, which allow you to, let's say, filter on customer or vendor or location. So if you noticed, I've logged into this environment and it says top level. Well, that's a consolidation across multiple companies or divisions. So you could look at this dashboard with one click on a specific company or division. Or in the case of where we came from here, top level is a consolidation of Texas and all the divisions or companies that we have in the database. Notice that the dashboards will change obviously dynamically when you change the filters. And by the way, you could do it from here or right within the dashboard. You could just pick a location or a group of locations. So drill downs on all the reports, drill downs on performance cards. So what do we mean by that? Well, you see the 4250. Your G&A expenses this month are up, trending up. So let's see why. Well, last month, you didn't spend anything. This month, you spent 4,200. So this is demonstration data. Obviously, we don't have a lot of information in here. But again, one click to drill down into the electric bills, perhaps. And again, right down to source documents if you choose. So very interactive, very different than what we serve up today in the 100 and 300 platforms. Let's just move a little bit further along and look at one more dashboard. Again, 3 performance cards. By the way, we've seen clients that have adopted 10 different performance cards, and a performance card is really just a KPI, a key performance indicator, or information that you want to see consolidated for drill down reporting. And it could be on anything. It could be, if you noticed, this first dashboard, if I roll up to the top where my performance cards are held, we're tracking the number of jobs from inception, or this month, or this year. Or you could look at profitability by job or by employee. So again, performance cards can measure anything. Any statistic or KPI that's important to your business should be a performance card up top with drill downs to detail. Let's jump back to that one dashboard that had project performance listed. Again, another set of different views of reports. Notice that this one is a one line of profitability by project. This one now is showing profitability by project as a column. And so a little mini P&L by job. Here we have, estimates and actuals. So you might say, well, wait a minute, let's put a dimensional filter on this data by, let's say, job type. I only want to see warehouse jobs or GC hotel jobs. So picking that as a group, as a job type, embedded into, I happen to have that embedded into this particular dashboard, and just click apply. And now I'm filtering the data specific to all companies or one company specific to that job type. And now you'll see this data a little bit present differently. And again, what happens if we click, we're going to drill into transactions. Let's make one more filter change. And let's look at just one vendor on one job type as of today. So now it's rendering a second time and you're seeing now just cost. Now, if I click on that, here are the invoices from that vendor on that one project. So very different. Notice up top again, We can drop it out to Excel. We could take any report in Sage, and there are actually 3 report designers that are delivered or available within Sage. A financial statement designer, very similar to what we provide in 300, but just with a lot more power. We have a report designer that is more wizard-like. That's a component that's built and included with every Sage Intacct deployment. And then we have a report writer called Interactive Custom Report Writer, ICRW, which is a kind of build it as you actually visually see the report as you're building it on screen. A much easier to use report tool than perhaps Crystal, if some of you have used Crystal reports before. So just as a recap, the dashboard tools are utilize the power of the Intacct dimensions. And again, a dimension think of them as attributes when you record a transaction into 100 or 300. An invoice, it has a job, a cost code, a category perhaps, obviously the vendor. Those are all attributes or dimensions. All of those within Sage Intacct allow for filters on any dashboard. Dimensions allow you to tag transactions with attributes and then slice and dice the data. Again, a couple of advantages as a recap to dashboards, customizable filters for ad hoc data searches, the performance cards, remember up top to track key performance indicators, and account groups and for data consolidations, whether it's across entities or across projects, and then drill down everywhere to supporting detail. So that's just a little intro on dashboards. We're going to move into a little bit about the user experience and as well as the user interface. So what do we mean by user experience? So when each of you log in, you notice I'm logged in as R. Sandlins. Each of you will have preferences. So when you log into Sage Intacct, these are preferences on how the software behaves for you. For instance, when I move around, first, what dashboards do I want displayed? Do I want a displayed dashboard? What colors do I want to see? When I navigate, do I use a hover or click? What are the applications and in what order do I want presented? So I promise I won't go through all this, but these are just options specific to how I want to use the software. Notice at the very bottom, I have a picture attached to my profile, and I've turned on or enabled a feature called Collaborate. So throughout Sage, when you're entering a transaction, you'll see this in a couple places, you can actually collaborate with other users within your accounting software on perhaps an invoice put on hold or a change order that's not approved or an estimate that's being changed and for what reasons. So it's a great way to eliminate having a dependence on Outlook for those exchanges that then never become connected to the transaction data in your accounting system, or Post-it notes, which you might have today on documents that are paper-based. So a little bit about that. I want to touch on one more thing, very important for everyone on 300 and 100 right now. You're getting annual updates from Sage, and you load them up. Some of you I know don't necessarily load it as soon as you go or as soon as you receive it. You don't have to worry about that anymore because Sage, again, provisions the software automatically. As well, the updates come with, in this case, the latest release, comes with multiple videos, which are just highlights of specific feature enhancements in the software. So if you don't want to watch the videos, that's fine. There's all kinds of documentation right on screen as well. When you go into a screen, you'll see in a few places, it'll have a kind of a quick peek into what's new in the software. One interesting thing in the R4 release of 2020, last November, Sage embedded functionality, artificial intelligence and machine learning into GL. So think of transactions today you enter in Sage 300. Those transactions, let's say you put a date in by mistake of instead of 01/15/21, you type 11/15/21. Well, when using Sage 300, that sits in a new file and it's not posted as a transaction. Well, this specific feature can automatically look at your database of transactions and then alert someone in the organization for a transaction that outlines what's a typical pattern or transaction that you would expect. There's also capabilities for you, those of you that use My Assistant to catch like transactions like that. We have the same capabilities built into the core suite to detect transactions or prevent transactions perhaps outside of an expected date range. So this is just a little bit about the user experience. I want to jump into as well the user interface. So what do we mean by that? I think the best way to do that is just to look at the applications. So again, I'm on application list. So all the core financial applications are listed here. Now, a couple things that are not here that will be coming. Payroll is not an application available yet in Sage Intacct Construction. We hope to see that construction union payroll module available later this year. That's probably the key application that's missing right now. Project management, we have a number of best-in-class options for that if you're using the Sage project management module in 100 or 300. So user interface. Let's look at accounts payable for a minute. Let's look at vendor setup. So by the way, any screen you enter, when you first touch an application and open up a vendor, a customer, a job, a GL account, you're going to see action buttons on the right. And it's consistent across every screen you open in Sage Intacct. So I'll just click add. I want to add a vendor. Here's the screen in which we add a vendor. I think many of you have said over the years, can you make these windows bigger? So I won't go through the specific enhancements of features that you'll see. For some of you, by the way, I noticed that you might be using Piracle or Wellspring Print Boss. That's all bundled into the core suite today, so we don't need perhaps some third-party software that you're today depending on for some of that functionality. So this is a vendor setup. Let's just jump right from there, let's say, to a customer setup. Same exact screen, look and feel, add, same kind of look and feel. If we jump into jobs, I want to look at job setup. Action buttons again, and one click to add. Now, have you noticed each of the screens we open, there's a display? What you see displayed is really up to you. So you have the ability in Sage Intacct on all of these screens to define what fields you want to see displayed on an open job list, open vendor list, open customer list. Not only that, you can specify the sequence of those columns and the filters on those columns. And there's some advanced options too. So when you see these screens I roll into and you're wondering, well, what's that list below? That could be anything you want it to be. And then each of these is a sort. So you could, quickly sort on a vendor, let's say street if you wanted to, or contact name. So that's just a little bit about, master files. Let's look at some transaction entry, whether it's a bill or a journal entry or a cash receipt. So again, I'm just going to jump around. And again, remember, this is on the web. So whether you're connecting from a home computer or an office computer, you're not restricted by the type of computer or device you're connecting to. It could be an iPad. And by the way, multi-factor authentication is standard in Sage Intacct. So when you do connect from a computer on your login that it hasn't yet detected, you're going to get a code that you're going to have to key in to verify that it really is you. So the expected type of security around access to the software is standard in Sage Intacct. But let's jump in for a minute and take a look at like AP bill entry. Think about this today in Sage 100 and 300. You go into a screen, right? That screen could be laid out differently depending on how you use 300. But everyone has asked us over the years, well, can you just make the screen larger? A couple other requests that have come in over the years is, can you add custom fields to any entry screen or any master file? In Sage 300, you can add custom fields to a specific tab in the master file. Within Intacct, we can add custom fields to any screen, even data entry screens, not just on the header, on the distribution below. Like in 300, we can customize this, security permitting, of course, by login. Well, it's customized by system, but you can customize it specific to what data elements you want to track. So let's just real quick enter a bill. And by the way, I'm going to cancel that. I'm just going to go right back in for a second. All I did was click on bills, action buttons again. I want to add an invoice. And you know, in many products, you click list to get a vendor list, and then you pick one, right? Here, it's type forward on almost in every field. So I just start typing in, and it picks everybody up with an A. I'll just pick a vendor, Alpha Installation. What's the bill number, invoice number? You're used to doing that. By the way, this window right here, if I wanted to say, hey, on this bill, now remember, we have Sage Paperless or TimberScan. There's versions that work with Intacct now. So if you're using those products today, we can transition you to that with this in a web version though. Or if you're not using those products and just want the ability to attach documents. So I'll just take this bill that I've gotten from this vendor. Maybe in an email, I would drag it in and just drag it and attach it right to this AP bill entry. The system can auto sequence almost all fields or all the basic fields. I'm just going to give it an ID. And then you could place it in a folder or just say sample invoices. That image now is attached to this transaction up on the web, throw the paper away. Now, I haven't coded this, but down below, here's your coding like you do today. You pick a job, pick a cost code. Well, let's pick a job with cost codes. Pick a job and a cost code. I'll go ahead and just pick something here and I'll choose it to other. And I'll just go ahead and say it's $400. Now, I happen to have the ability to be able to post, but you might allow me when I log in to only submit an invoice. And then it goes to a workflow that would be an approver of that invoice. And then once approved, we could post at the same time or approve and then someone else can post through. I'm just going to take this invoice we just recorded together and just post it. Now, when I say post, I said post to new, it just pops into another screen. What's the next invoice? Everything's updated all at that moment. So you don't have to run an AP batch report, review it, and post separately. You can post transactions. And by the way, any transaction you post, you can pop it right back up and edit it and make any changes, security permitting, of course. So we just entered a bill. Let's go look at, let's say, what does a purchase order look like to enter? So I'm in purchasing. By the way, you can navigate in a very simple menu like this, or if your preference is to use more of a workflow based on how the software is defined, you can navigate this way. And notice I have different types of purchase orders, so that's why it's got a little down arrow there. But you could go from a requisition to a purchase order to a receipt, and a receipt to an invoice, all in one flow, all in one process. I won't go through all the options in here today, but love to cover this in more detail. Let's together enter a purchase order. So I'm just going to go to PO. Now, these are different types of POs. In your organizations, you might just have one type of commitment called a purchase order, period. And you don't see anything else here. You, though, could have different types of POs. A PO for equipment purchases, which might prompt for different information. You might have a different receiving process. You might have a subcontract that has a different form. So based on what preferences you have, you can have different types of POs with different formats for documents and different workflows. So I'm just going to go into a regular purchase order. Again, same kind of window, standard, action buttons on the right based on your permissions. I'm going to go ahead and just add a purchase order. Same thing. I'm going to pick a vendor, inserts that data. Again, I don't have any real custom fields turned on here. I could attach perhaps a quote right to this purchase order. Down below, I'm going to actually code this to a job. I'll pick a cost code. Oops, pick a cost code. Now, you don't have to look up if you know it, just type it in. Let's say it's materials. And I'm just going to say one at $80 or $800. All right, post. So we just took an invoice, posted it through. By the way, it does check for budgets or estimates on the job that you just charged to make sure you're not committing more than you expected on the estimate. And there's flags there that you can turn on or off based on whether you want that to happen or not happen. And by the way, it not only looks at the estimate, but it looks at what cost has been posted and what open purchase orders. So we're really going to control tightly your purchasing or spend based on budgets and prior commitments and invoices posted to a job and a cost code. That PO we just created today, one click, turn that PO right to an invoice with one click. Now, you could just say, hey, the receipt matches the PO. And by the way, you could have a receiving function as an interim step here. I just went right from a PO to an invoice. So we went from a PO to an invoice with one click, and I just click post, and you have just, oh, sorry, I need an invoice number, right? One click post, and you went from perhaps a requisition to a purchase order to a receipt to an invoice with one flow with minimal data entry. So we talked a little bit about a user experience. We looked briefly at some workflow. So just a real recap of Sage Intacct. This is a modern platform deployed and connected the way you would expect today. We have real-time project and financial visibility through these interactive dashboards with filters and drill downs and performance cards and highlighting key metrics in your company, all available by user and secured. Automated workflows, like we just looked at, save you time while enforcing company policies. So a little bit more, let's say, guardrails to processes if you choose. And then software, what you've been asking for years, software that's intuitive, thoughtfully designed, but yet highly customizable. And that's why we're so excited at Accordant about Sage Intacct Construction. It's all adding up to a modern, state-of-the-art construction accounting solution. So we're, Krista, we're at 9:31, I just noticed. So if we have questions, I apologize, we didn't field those questions interactively with you, but we'll look at the open questions, respond in an email by the close of today. So if there are questions in there, Krista, just forward those to me, and we'll make sure either I or one of the other sales reps responds right away with answers. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. We really appreciate your time and look forward to, if you have an interest, to dig deeper into this application and its advantages to your business.